Hello, everyone. My name is Sue McDonald. I'm the Secretary of the Executive Board at NESHCo, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar. Typically, in January, we devote our webinars to helping people prepare award-winning Lamplighter entries because our deadlines are quickly approaching for those annual awards that recognize the best in New England. Today, we have NESHCo Vice President Vanessa Stafford, who also chairs the Lamplighter Committee, and she'll talk a little bit about the presentation of award applications. But also to augment it, last year we started inviting people who won large awards at the previous year's Lamplighter Award ceremony to talk a little bit about their award and their process for getting there. So today we have Alan Camo, Northern Lights Acadia Hospital, who was responsible for the 2020 Best in New England winner, which is the top award given by NESHCo. And we also have Nancy Stewart of Reardon and Stewart, who was the winner of a 2020 Lamplighter Gold winner for logo design. So they will both also talk today, and we'll be answering questions at the end. So please use the questions bar over in the right panel to ask anything of any of our presenters. So with that said, Vanessa, please take it away.
Thank you, Sue. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And for those who are new to this webinar, hopefully you'll walk away with some key tips and strategies for making your lamplighter shine. I'll have you go to the next slide. So one of the first things that we like to do is just review the deadlines. We have the early bird deadline coming up on Monday. However, that might shift a little bit given that we've received significant feedback about folks being completely overwhelmed with COVID messaging and other such projects. So stay tuned. We'll send out an email if that changes. The standard deadline is Monday, February 8th, and then the final deadline is Monday, February 15th. And I'm pretty sure that that one won't change. But again, stay tuned. Next slide. One of the things that we wanted to review this year, we always go through what's changed with the Lamplighter call for entries and identify or call out anything that's new. So this year, because the pandemic hit the US in January through March timeframe, depending on where you were located, a lot of your efforts, we understand, have been dedicated to COVID and any sort of COVID marketing or communication strategies or campaigns. And so we created a new category called Healthcare Interrupted, Navigating Challenging Times. And this is really to call out any sort of project that had initially had one goal or one path, if you will, but then was completely disrupted by external factors just like COVID-19 or any other issue. And so it's under the single item and series division, but it's really about the entry itself is how did your organization take that change or that disruption and pivot to accomplish the goals that you needed to do. Next slide. Okay, so to start, we like to focus on the three, the big three that deliver on a great entry. And so this really identifies with strategy, creative, and results. And those are the key pieces that you'll want to think about when you're doing your entry. Next slide. So the basic anatomy of a Lamplighter entry for those who have not done one before, they are broken out in 4 different pieces that the judges look for. The first is situational analysis, and that is really where you kind of set the stage and you talk about the challenge that you have at hand. Essentially, it's the why that you got involved with the campaign in the first place, or why you launched it in the first place. Next comes the statement of objectives. So under the campaign, what exactly were you trying to achieve? And again, you want to think about measurable outcomes as much as you can, because the judges really look for that, for that data, for those outcomes and success stories. Program planning and strategy, really walking through what the thought process was, key decisions, and those key factors that drove the campaign. And then again, of course, results documentation. So the judges like you to be, specific. Anecdotal feedback is helpful, but it doesn't necessarily set the stage or communicate your overall success in a way that data and reporting on outcome measures do. Next slide. So the basic rules of submission that we like to highlight for folks is, again, with that situational awareness, you want to answer the why and start with the problem. Walking through your planning process, rule number 2, you're going to think strategically about making that plan and really identifying what the objectives were. And then rule number 4, obviously creating the entry, taking a step back and looking at the big 3, strategy, creative, and results. Rule number 5 in your entry, we want to really stay on message. And then again, rule number 6, the most important, besides identifying the overall strategy of the campaign, is that results documentation. Next slides. So again, just to review tips for success, outlining your objectives, the goals, the audiences, the strategy and execution, that's the bulk of your entry. And then when you're talking about your data and results documentation, you want to make sure that you're aligning those measurable outcomes that demonstrate your success. And so those are the key data points that the judges will be looking for. One of the things that we see often in other entries when we're judging for colleagues across the country is, the anecdotal feedback that it was really well received. And that doesn't necessarily tell the true story of the success or how, or demonstrate that how the strategy and execution of your campaign actually achieved the objectives that you wanted. You want to allow for time to develop and review your entry with your team and really make sure that you're hitting all those rules, if you will, that we reviewed. You also want to choose the best entry for each category. So throughout the year, you will have engaged in a variety of different campaigns, projects, initiatives. You really want to make sure that you're identifying any of the work that you've done and align it to suit, to have it be the best entry for each category that you're going to enter. And then just a reminder, the judges that are reviewing your work, they're held accountable by the same outcome measures and strategic execution that you are every day. And so they're going to want to see you communicate that effectively just as they would and demonstrate those results accordingly. Thank you. So some of the feedback that we've gotten, or some of the questions that we've gotten from entries, and then some of the feedback that we've gotten from our judges are just some terminology that help with demonstrating the results, because that's usually the biggest challenge that people have. And so we've broken it out here in marketing, operational, and strategic results, and just some of those bullet points or data points that they like to look for. And so you want to highlight response rates, ROI, image and awareness, or even patient intake and volume under marketing. Under operational results, the same. Appointments, patient satisfaction, volume. These are things that you can quantify through surveys or patient intake rates, different things like that. And then strategic results, it's behind my screen, I apologize. Market share, outmigration, and profitability. So those are some tangible results that you can demonstrate within your entry. Next slide. So for those of you who are new to the Lamplighter, some of the questions that we get every single year, we've highlighted in this presentation, and I'll walk through them quickly. And this entire presentation will be on the NESHCo website as well. So should you need to go back, you'll be able to. But we always get the question about creative or campaigns that are produced in-house versus agency. And so we just wanted to highlight that agency produce is again hired. The agency is hired or directed by the client. But they actually produce the brochure, publication, campaign, what have you. But the agency itself is the one that's responsible for the creative direction and the execution. If it's produced in-house, it's just that. So the hospital marketing or PR staff member, they are the ones that provide the creative direction. They conceptualize or produce the brochure. It's coordinated, with even if coordinated, it's production with freelance copywriters, graphic designers, what have you, but the in-house team is really who drives that strategic and creative direction. Next slide. So the other question that we get is, based on location of hospital or agency. So if the ad agency is located in New England, but one of the hospitals that's their client is located out of the state, Can that agency enter the work for them, on their behalf? Can they enter the lamplighter? And the question is yes, as you'll see. So it's the competition is open to all PR and Marcom professionals employed by New England healthcare institutions or agencies. Another question that we get is the time frame for entry. So if it has to be within the calendar year of 2020, and this will provide a little timeline. But if you started a project in late 2019, is it eligible for the 2021 Lamplighters? And so if the project is between October 1st, 2019 and January 31st of 2021, that's the time frame that the work or the campaign that was created and executed is able to submit for the Lamplighters. And this actually gives the agencies or the hospitals, the healthcare communication staff, time to actually carry off the campaign and see the results and actually have data to demonstrate. So one word about the judging for those again who are new. Judges for the Lamplighters come from outside outside New England healthcare communication professional societies, just like NESHCo. So we work with colleagues across the country, and it's usually anywhere from 3 to 7 different organizations that provide judges, and we do that so that there isn't any sort of favoritism or what have you. But the judges are absolutely objective at that point. And again, they're healthcare professionals that do exactly what you do every day, so they're going to want to see that that entry communicated effectively and those results documented. And that they align with those goals aligned with your objectives, or those results aligned with your objectives. Each Lamplighter entry is judged by 2 different judges, and so it's not just one person reviewing your work. You have a multitude of people, which is another level of objectivity that we can offer. The judges are assigned based on their profession, their professional areas of expertise, and so if there is a brand campaign, we're not going to give that to a copywriter, a judge who's a copywriter. And so we try to align the entries with the judges that actually do that work to provide the best feedback. And then in turn, the NESHCo board and other and members of NESHCo provide those colleagues with reciprocal judging. Next slide. So wrapping up, who is eligible for the Best in New England? The Best in New England is selected from the top 5 scoring gold Lamplighter entries. So after all of that judging is done, we take the top 5 scoring gold entries, and then these entries are reviewed by an entirely separate panel of judges who then determine who the Best of New England is. As I mentioned before, this presentation and a number of different resources are available on the NESHCo website. There's information about the Lamplighter Awards and the call for entries, as well as how to produce a Lamplighter. The Award Force platform, you'll find the entry portal for that on NESHCo. I'm sure many of you have already started some, or at least know have signed in. But there's also a user guide on the NESHCo website, and so you can turn to that anytime if you have any questions, or you can also email the team at admin@neshco.org, and that's on the website as well. And then also, if you want to take a look at last year's 2020 recipients, the entire Lamplighter Awards book is on the website as well, so you can take a look through and see who entered and won for every single category. Next slide. Oh, and so before we move on to our next speaker, I'll just stop and see if we have any questions about the entries, about any of the items that are, or previous questions that I had brought up, or anything new. And Sue, I'll turn it over to you to handle that. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Vanessa, what was that?
I put out a call for questions. I just finished, and I'm going to turn it over to you to facilitate the Q&A if we have any, and if not, move on to Nancy.
Yeah, there have not been any questions so far, and I think it's always because you're your presentation is so complete. But please feel free to drop questions into the question panel on the right. We can still field them going forward. Vanessa can always come back and answer as well. But now Nancy is going to talk about her award-winning application last year.
Hi, everyone. We can actually move past the cover slide to the first one, which is an introduction to me. So I will note that when we're not in a pandemic with salons shut down, I do have blonde hair. So that is actually, we're the same person. This is just my COVID hair color. So hi, everyone. My name is Nancy Stewart, and I am the founder of Reardon & Stewart Digital Marketing. We are based on the North Shore of Massachusetts, actually right near the Newburyport area, if anybody is familiar with the region. And we're a small boutique firm that specializes in brand experiences, and we work across many industries, but we do have a concentration in both healthcare and higher education. That's where our team has particular expertise. I myself personally have been working in healthcare for about 12 years, not always in marketing. Like many people who work in healthcare communications, I previously was a journalist. One of my last jobs before I made the switch was I was the State House Bureau Chief for Gatehouse Media. So in that capacity, in addition to covering the governor's office and the legislature, I did a lot of work with healthcare reform and health policy. And I was actually honored to be a Blue Cross Blue Shield health fellow in 2011, which if anybody is familiar with that program, it is a pretty wonderful fellowship program that is takes place here in Massachusetts and draws health journalists from all around the country. But I did end up making the switch, and I worked for a couple of years as a content strategist in the healthcare field. In my career, once I did make that switch, I have actually worked either as an editor or as the actual content producer or as the digital strategist on over 175 healthcare microsites. Those have been for hospitals around the country, health systems, providers, insurance companies, and also a lot of them are just for service line microsites. And I've actually interviewed, I believe, it's about 164 and counting, doctors, surgeons, clinicians. So I have a lot of experience across pretty much, I think, every service line in healthcare. And at the last time that there was an in-person NESHCo conference, I was actually really honored to be one of the speakers. And I did speak on ADA compliance for healthcare websites. So basically best practices for how hospitals and health systems can make sure that their web platforms are accessible to people with disabilities. And that includes patients, and it may even include employees who are utilizing those sites as part of their job. So we went through the best practices that you should be thinking about when you are either redesigning the site or just trying to implement user-friendly features. Next slide. Thank you. So we were honored to receive a gold Lamplighter for brand design. And just really quick about our firm, and then I want to get on to some of the tips that we're going to share. But I did mention that we specialize in delivering brand experiences, but as anyone here who works in marketing knows, brand experiences encompasses a wide array of services. So we do, in addition to focusing on logo design, we also do the full array of digital and print design elements, be that a brochure, a flyer, or any type of print product that our clients might need. We do design and launch websites. We do email marketing campaigns. We do a lot of work with HubSpot and other data-driven platforms, and train our clients on how to take advantage of those. We do content strategy. We produce a great deal of healthcare content, search engine marketing, paid social advertising, and SEO work as well. Next slide. So this was our winning entry. This was a new logo design for a pathology group that is based in Connecticut, but also serves hospitals in Western Massachusetts, called Eastern Connecticut Pathology Consultants. This was part of a complete brand redesign. So they basically came to us and asked us to completely reimagine what their brand image would be. They were starting to pivot, in addition to simply managing on-site labs, at a series of hospitals. They were starting to become lab consultants, and they were working with dozens of private labs as well in terms of setting up on-site labs and managing them. And so they wanted to elevate their brands. They wanted to develop a more sophisticated look. And so this project, in addition to coming up with the brand new logo design, we did also launch a brand new website presence for them. We did brand photography. We did several, I think about 3 or 4 on-site photo shoots. We developed a wide array of print products, including some patient education materials. They wanted patients to really understand what happened to their specimens once they reached the lab, and to really better understand the role of a pathologist who doesn't really have a patient-facing role, and they wanted to try to personalize that for their patients. And I think that the starting place for us was the logo, really kind of getting a feel for what their new look was going to be. So next slide, please. So I guess I have 5 tips that I think really framed our thinking as we put together our submission a 1.5 years ago now. So the way that we thought about demonstrating value for this particular entry was to really focus on our process and how we arrived at the logo. As was mentioned, the Lamplighters really do put a lot of emphasis on data points and being able to really provide a story with the data to show how successful a campaign was. And as you can imagine, with a logo design, that's very challenging. You don't really have great data to prove that people love the brand new logo. So in order to compensate for that, we just really overemphasized how much data and how much thinking and strategy went into actually developing the logo itself. So the 5 points I was going to share with you guys today is that step 1, we really detailed what our brand strategy process included. We elaborated a great deal on the design thinking and how we came on the design that we settled on. We shared other concepts that led to the ultimate design, also to show where some of our other thinking was and what directions we didn't go in. We provided before and after visuals, which I think that would be pretty common sense for this particular entry, was to show how you turn the dial tone. And one thing that we were especially proud of is I think we demonstrated uniqueness and creativity, because our logo was actually animated, which was something we did to sort of help make it stand out for this client. Next slide. So in terms of detailing the brand strategy process, we really described everything that went into that. So basically, we met with the client on several occasions on site in Connecticut to do a pretty in-depth brand strategy workshop with them. As part of that, we conducted stakeholder interviews with all of the partners. We even talked to some of their clients to really understand what it was like to work with them and what their strengths and differentiators are in their marketplace. We came up with brand new pillars for the brand in terms of brand messaging strategy and really what we wanted to emphasize in terms of their strengths. We identified the business goals to help guide the entire process to really understand what their short and long-term goals were for the entire project to help make sure that the logo design would support those for the client. We defined the target audiences also to make sure that we had the right folks in mind. And we came up with a full, really, media strategy as well. And all of that was sort of part of pitching the logos. Next slide. And we elaborated a great deal on our design thinking. So, here I just kind of showed, the brand guidelines here, but, really we wanted it to make sure that, the Lamplighter team understood that, it was intentional. The colors that we chose. If you are familiar with pathology, you may know that if you've ever seen pathology slides, they have that like purple dye on them. And so we were going for shades of purple to really bring that in. We intentionally avoided anything that was very cliche in healthcare. So we went with an abstract logo. which can sometimes be a tough sell for very evidence-based doctors who like to have things that really stand for what they are. We were able to kind of push this team to really think out of the box and to go with something that's a bit more abstract. So if you actually look at the logo mark, this is actually meant to be an abstract representation of the inside of a microscope. So instead of having that microscope icon, which we tend to see a lot for labs or pathology, we actually sort of wanted to do something that was much more creative. And you may not get it at first, but when you animate it, which we're going to show you, I think that you'll see kind of what we were going for. And we purposely avoided any types of cliches that we had seen in healthcare. For example, there is a little bit of blue in here, but we didn't want to have a blue logo because blue is very commonly seen in healthcare design. And I think what was really cool is that we also tried to make the typography really part of the design. So the curves of the letters and the spacing and the shape, it really is meant to be very, very streamlined and kind of all fit together. Next slide, please. So we shared concepts that led to the final design. You know, some of these are not our favorites, and luckily they weren't for the client. We really do feel that the one that we went with was really the best, but we did also want to talk about some other directions that the team wanted us to go in and sort of explain why those ones didn't make it and why we ultimately ended up on the path that we were on. Next slide, please. So here's the before and after. So as you can see before, it was a pretty, it was just simply like a really blocky, chunky logo. It didn't really stand out. You can see that there is actually a little bit of abstraction, I guess, in the way that the C was meant to look a little bit like a microscope. But they weren't happy with their logo, and they really wanted something that would jump out a lot more and look much more sophisticated. Next slide. And here, it's playing a little bit slow, we determined, but this was the animation. So unfortunately, it actually does play a bit faster than this, but if you can see, if we can just play it one more time, this logo does animate on their site. So the logo mark itself turns, so you can see it's almost like a doctor is starting to kind of bring it into focus. And as they turn the logo mark, the brand name ECPC comes into focus gradually. And then you see the tagline, Eastern Connecticut Pathology Consultants. And that does play a little bit quicker on the site, but that was something that we were pretty proud of, was that animation. Thank you. So I'm happy to, have any questions, and if anybody even thinks about them after, just please feel free to jot down my information, and I'd be more than happy to provide some tips or insights. So thank you.
Nancy, thank you so much. I loved the animation, even in slow motion. It really does look like a microscope zooming in, like with the different barrels moving. So that's really cool.
Thank you.
There's still are no questions, so I think that it's time for Alan then to talk about his big win last year, and maybe there'll be questions then. Alan?
Yes, thank you so much. That sounds really good. I'm very, very excited to be here, very honored to get a chance to talk about our Best in New England submission for the Acadia Hospital Cares campaign. Before I do that, I don't have a slide about myself, but just briefly, I've been in nonprofit communications for 30 years. 28 of those years have been in healthcare with the same system. So when I first started after grad school, I had an internship with Bangor Symphony Orchestra, doing some marketing for them, and I wrote a proposal upon my graduation to become their marketing director. So that was my first ever job, which was great. I learned a lot about classical music and how to work in the community. After that, I got a job as a community relations associate with Eastern Maine Medical Center. At the time, the system was Eastern Maine Healthcare Systems. A few years back, we transitioned, did a major brand overhaul, and now we're Northern Light Health. So I've worked for that system for a majority of my career. Within that, I've had many clients. I've worked for hospice and primary care, pretty much, any type of healthcare that we provide, I've worked with clients. But for the majority of my career with the system, I was the director of communications for Acadia Hospital. And that's where the CARES campaign originated, was through Acadia Hospital. So if we could go to the next slide, just a little bit about me. Great. So I'm seeing up on the screen a restart in process. Is that just me? Okay, I got rid of that. Something was popping up. You're gonna love technology. So Northern Light Health, we have 10 hospitals throughout the system. We're all the way up in Northern Maine and Aroostook County. We now have a hospital, Mercy Hospital, which is down in Southern Maine and Cumberland County, and we have 8 hospitals all around the rest of Maine. Of course, Maine is very rural, so we have not only the hospitals, but we have primary care locations, nursing homes, just a wide array of services that you can imagine. And significantly, we employ 12,000 people in Maine, so we are a major employer for the state of Maine. Next slide. So Acadia Hospital is really where my passion for communications evolved. I found that I thoroughly enjoyed working with the community on identified issues, and primarily like education and outreach. And with Acadia Hospital, it was at the time relatively new organization, and since it's a specialty hospital providing psychiatric care, behavioral health care, and substance abuse treatment services, we were providing the care in a social context that could be difficult. There's still a lot of stigma and misunderstanding around mental health issues, and I just loved the challenge of not only educating people about the services that we provided, but also addressing some of the major mental health challenges in our communities, so people would see us as a trusted resource. As you can see here, we provide, again, a wide array of services. We're a very unique hospital in the state of Maine, as you can imagine. And because of that, we had a very special image and a special voice that we could share. That's where the campaign really came from. Is we identified a need that was really impactful in our community. And if we could go to the next slide. So the CARES campaign stands for Child and Adolescent Resource and Educational Series. And the main reason why we started the campaign was because Maine actually has a higher than average rate of youth suicide. So roughly 30 youth ages 10 to 18 annually die by suicide. We have a higher than national average rate per capita. It's, I think, 12.6 versus 9.7 per 100,000 people. So it was a significant issue in our communities. We saw it as care providers. We saw the ramifications and what would happen in the wake of even just one suicide by a young person, because that potential is just wiped out. It's very traumatizing for everyone, and it's just a tragic thing. So we realized that this was something that was crucial to the community, and we saw it as a wonderful opportunity for us to step up and to share our expertise and show our compassion and work with the community in a proactive way to address this issue. Significantly also, over 36% of LGBTQ youth report having suicidal ideation, which is far more than the 11% you see in heterosexual or cisgender youth. So that was also something that really jumped out to us and was a focus that we had for our campaign. As you can see, we wanted to highlight this issue with adults who work with youth. So this wasn't directed primarily towards youth. It was directed more towards the people who work with youth, the teachers, social workers, coaches, nonprofit youth organizations like YMCAs, all of those types of folks. We wanted to arm them and help them understand what the issue was, and also give them tools to know what to do if they were concerned with a young person that they knew or worked with. So we wanted to do that in two ways. We developed a video series, and we also created what we called CARES packages. So if we could jump to the next slide, I can talk a little bit more about that. So you can see I use this phrase a lot. I was very honored to work for Acadia. Now I actually work for the system. I'm the lead communications specialist, and now I'm back to working with a whole host of different clients across our system. But when I was working for Acadia, I often talked about our outreach activities as PR with a purpose. We were in a situation where one of the best ways to market our services was to be a wonderful, proactive and educational community partner, to raise awareness around these topics. And that, for me, you know, almost being like an educator and also collaborating with pre-existing organizations was really the perfect combination. I just really, really love that. Also, working with youth was a big deal. So this PR with a purpose theme really, really underscored the whole campaign. And some of these things that I'm going to talk about now, Nancy has mentioned. But the first thing that we realized in developing an effective and award-winning campaign is you have to have something that's a compelling need and or an opportunity. And certainly the issues that I just brought up meet that criteria. And I think that compelling aspect of the importance of what we were doing really helped us, you know, rise above some of the other award nomination or submissions, perhaps because of that. We had very strong, well-defined goals and objectives, and which is key. Like our goal was to reach out to adults, as I mentioned, throughout the state and try to raise awareness of this issue. The objectives were around the videos and the views that we would get from them, and also the distribution and use of the CARES packages. So those were our two objectives. We picked them because they really helped us judge whether or not this was an effective and worthwhile campaign that made a difference. And also, we knew that it would be helpful in submitting for awards in the future. The quality materials and strong execution of our plan. We had a partner in Osborne Media. So they actually developed, they did the videography, they did the shooting. We were the executive producers of all of that, and the creative directors. One of the other wonderful things that we did, the few photos that are on my slides here, these are local youth. So we had about 30 plus local youth who acted as actors in our videos. So we feature our experts, and they're talking about different subject matter, like eating disorders, substance abuse, bullying, resiliency, one particularly on suicide prevention, and a few others, because those are all the types of things that lead a youth to feelings of hopelessness and helplessness that might end them attempting to take their own life. So we wanted to address the suicide prevention issues by looking at the issues that lead to that type of ideation. And we partnered with local youth, we got their families involved, and each video would feature a different young person in the video. And so we created like this theme, and they kind of ran together and they played off from each other. You can also find that in the materials that we developed. So we had the videos, and we also had really, really well done brochures that went with each video. And with the CARES packages, we created a whole array of things. So people who received the CARES package would have like a train the trainer guide in there. They would have posters, they would have DVDs of the videos. They would have lots of different resources that would make them feel more confident in talking to, say, a classroom about this subject matter, because it's often very, very difficult to do that. The other thing we did too was also include a survey in that CARES package to get feedback from them. So the final thing, again, yes, results. So we tracked a myriad of things. We looked at how many people were viewing our videos on our YouTube channel. We detailed and accounted for all of the different presentations we did in the community around the CARES campaign. We detailed all of the media opportunities that we had with the campaign. And very importantly, we had the survey, and we got the results from the survey and tabulated that, which showed clearly that those adults who received the CARES packages and then used them to educate others in their community, they found it to be extremely informative. They found it to provide them with a lot of confidence in dealing with this topic. And overall, the scores were very high and were indicative of a well thought out and effective campaign. We could have submitted this for a Lamplighter maybe the year before, because it was in progress, but we chose to wait because we wanted to make sure that we had a very robust amount of data that showed the effectiveness of the campaign, which I think in the end really helped us, again, differentiate ourselves from the other outstanding candidates. And then there's just one final slide. So if you want to learn more, you can go to our website. You'll find a lot of information there, as well as the videos. We also have our YouTube channel still up there, so you can go and see the videos there as well. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to me directly, my email, telephone number, and LinkedIn. account is right there. And I want to thank you for listening to my presentation. And I'm really looking forward to getting some questions and having a brief dialogue and seeing if Nancy and I can help you feel more confident and excited about your own opportunities.
So,
Hi, Alan. I'm sorry. I was talking and I didn't realize I was on mute. I'm wondering where you store your lamp. I'm always curious to see how organizations display that beautiful lamplighter.
Well, I can say COVID has impacted a lot of things. One thing I have to say, one major regret, I bet Nancy feels the same, is I so wish we could have been in person together as professionals, and it would have been such a thrill to be with my peers and receive the award in person at the banquet that is traditionally held during the conference. So that was really a bummer. Regarding the lamplighter, the award, it took a while for me to realize it had been delivered. I've been working from home for 10 months, and our system's pretty large, so it did make it to the right place, but I didn't find out about its delivery for maybe a week or so. They weren't sure what to do with it. When we finally received it, we did determine that it obviously should reside at Acadia Hospital, and they have a beautiful award display that this lamplighter is now sort of the main feature. So it's prominently displayed right outside of the lobby at Acadia Hospital.
Very nice, very nice. We have a couple of comments. Maeve says, nice job by both, great tips, thank you. But then there was a question, and I can't seem to find it now, so I'll paraphrase it. It was, can you both or can you each give more detail about the metrics? Everybody gets worried about the metrics, and I know that Vanessa had talked earlier about anecdotal comments that we see when we judge other areas. It does seem like NESHCo is very very focused on metrics, because that's what drives where the dollars get spent. So can you each touch a little bit more on metrics, how you decided what to use and how you ferreted them out?
Go ahead, Nancy.
Well, I can jump in here. As I mentioned when I was speaking, I think for logo design, metrics was very tricky, and it was something that caused us a bit concerned. So when I actually attended this webinar, when we were thinking about submitting our own proposal to be considered, this was a big question in my mind, and I think I asked this exact same question during the last webinar. But like I said, I think that logo design can be pretty subjective. Did we do a great design? Did it represent, there's not really a lot of great metrics that we could have compiled to really to show that in a data-driven way. So as I mentioned, we tried to compensate by proving or showing how much data went into the thought process and the design. So we really painstakingly put great effort to talk about the target audiences that we wanted to appeal to make to show what the business goals were that we identified with the client, and then to connect those to the final design, to talk about the strengths and differentiators and the marketing messages for the clients and their particular marketplace, and then to connect those to some of the design thinking that went into the logo. So I think that we actually tried to show how there was data-driven thinking actually on the other end, on the input process. And so even though it was designed, we still wanted to make sure that we included data points in it, even though it was challenging to necessarily use data to show that it was a successful design. Hopefully that helps.
I really liked that approach too, because like you said, it's a subjective thing. I tend to enter in the writing categories, and if it's writing for a blog, I guess there's like some hits, but there's still not, it's more of a subjective reaction that people have to it. Photography is the same thing. So it's some of the categories are more challenging, but I really like that you front-ended your analysis like that. That was interesting. Alan, how did you approach it?
Yeah, so we approached it by being very thorough. I mean, first and foremost, we wanted to collect data because we wanted to make sure that our efforts were being effective around the goals and objectives that we had developed. So the fact that we had the data that made for an excellent proposal for an award is really secondary, because for us, the most important thing was that we were potentially saving lives. And, you know, when I talk about stuff like that with youth, I mean, even one person, if we helped one scenario, it's just amazing. And so that was why we developed the metrics we did, but they also translated really well to the award process. So I'll just actually read like what our objectives were. The main objective was to provide CARES packages to every one of the over 500 schools in Maine, serving the 125,000 students in grade 4 through 12, and 50 or more youth-focused nonprofits, community health clinics, and other agencies engaging with youth that could benefit from the CARES packages. The secondary objective is to achieve over 500 views for each of the 7 videos that can be found online. So, for example, results, and we documented that the youth suicide prevention video, and this was like, you know, quite a while back, had over 18,000 views. The LGBTQ youth video had almost 3,000. And then we had some that were over 1,000. So we had a range. So some of the metrics with the views were what we wanted. They exceeded our goals, and a few were a little bit less than that. But that's what you expect. Some of the topics were more compelling than others. For the CARES packages, we actually tracked that. We gave out almost 300. So that's a significant amount of the schools in our state, as well as the agencies. And then when they did use the information in the packages and submitted their surveys back to us, we saw that they were very well received, that we saw increases in confidence, a sense of knowledge that allowed them to present in a more effective manner. And we had quite a few questions. I'm just trying to look at, like, one of them was, how would you rate your ability to respond to parents and caregivers regarding topics covered in the curriculum? And we used a Likert scale from 1 to 5, and almost 90% were 4 and 5. We just had, I think, 1 in the 3 categories. So that was similar. Like, all the different things that we asked received very high marks. So I think those were the 2 major things. Again, we did some of the simpler stuff too, where we just tracked activity, which doesn't really talk about change in behavior or knowledge or awareness, but still goes towards how effective you are in getting the word out with the media and presentation. So I don't know if that's too much information, but you asked for some specifics. I'd be happy to give more if anyone wanted to reach out to me.
Thank you very much. Oh, all of a sudden, there's more questions. Hold on a second. Do you, either NESHCo or the winners, have any guidance on how to choose between categories? Our entry could fit into a few categories. Are there some that are more competitive? Very good question, Beth. I don't know whether one of you guys would like to field it. Both of yours seem to fit specific categories, so maybe this is a question for Vanessa.
Yes, we can take a look, and I'm not sure that we've ever kind of run that survey, if you will, on which categories are more competitive. We can definitely look at that and get back to you, Beth. I think one of the largest categories. Well, it depends on. I guess it depends on the entry that you're talking about. But if it could fit into a few different categories, maybe we can touch base offline, and I can take a look at last year's and even a couple of years worth of entries to see. I just don't have that that answer for you right now. I'm trying to think of the best way, and maybe Emily from NESHCo might be able to take a look at that on the fly. Sorry, Emily. Trying to think of what is the. I mean, blogs are pretty competitive. Websites always are, because there's either a refresh or rebrand. Let's see. Internal communications is always a big one. I'm just trying to run through the list off the top of my head, but I can certainly email you a few, that are that we receive a lot of entries in, and then you can kind of, you can get a feel for which category might be best for you.
Beth could reach out to you directly, Vanessa, is that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay,
absolutely.
Perfect. Beth, please feel free to reach out to Vanessa for some guidance on that. Are there any other questions? Vanessa, do you have any questions after listening to both the presentations? It looks like, Nancy, you might have something that you wanted to say.
Oh, sorry, you're just a little choppy on my end. I'm not sure if anyone else is having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, Sue, you're breaking up. I guess I think what she was saying is that if either you or Ellen had any closing remarks or tips that you wanted to provide before we let everyone get back to their day.
Well, I actually have a bit of a follow-up on Beth's question, actually, Vanessa.
Perfect.
There are some projects that might actually make sense being submitted to more than one category. Is that allowed?
We've seen that, yes. Yep.
All right. And then one question I have, if I'm allowed to ask questions, I actually was hoping to elaborate a bit more on the potpourri category in what is really appropriate to go into potpourri. My understanding is that's something that doesn't really neatly fit in one of the prepackaged categories, but maybe you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
Sue, I'll have you help as well, because I know that you helped create that. That was one of the new categories that we created a couple of years ago. But it's Nancy, to your point, it's really, and it could be exactly what Beth is looking for. We don't have a lot of entries in there because usually people find the right fit with regard to category based off the work that was done or the kind of project that it was. But the potpourri category was really we took out some ancillary categories that we were getting no entries in, and just to make sure that we didn't lose them. Publications is pretty specific, right? But with potpourri, we really created that so that if you had a project that was out of the box, or you're not thinking that it fits specifically a category, or there might be just again a project that doesn't necessarily align with websites, with blogs, vlogs, whatever the category is. So it's proving to be a pretty great catch-all for entrants that that don't know where to place their specific entry. And they're actually great to take a look at too, and and judge from. We kind of followed suit from our colleagues across the country that that created the same kind of category. So it could definitely go in there as well if you're not quite sure.
Thank you.
Kayla actually posted. I don't know if I'm coming through choppy still, but Kayla Mudge posted that potpourri is definitely less competitive.
Yes. Yep. I would say that as well.
And she has a question, where would the launch of an employee app fit in? Would that be a potpourri entry, or would it fit in somewhere else?
I'm sorry, an employee pack?
App.
What did you say?
Application.
Oh, an app.
Yes.
Oh, geez. You could do that in potpourri. I would think that would be a really interesting entry for internal communications. It depends on the point of the app, but I think that you would be able to. There's, digital. There's a couple of digital categories, but again, those are kind of more focused around content or campaigns. But I think internal communications, employee campaigns. There's a category that that talks about that as well. So I would think any of those three. That's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the entries this year.
Are there any other questions from the group? No, I see none coming in. You guys did a very nice job of presenting different approaches, but really comprehensive thinking too. So I hope that I'm sure that gave people a great way to frame their applications as they go into it, especially people who've never done it before. It can be a little intimidating. Is there anything else, Vanessa?
No, I would just, say good luck and thank you for joining us today. And just a reminder that you'll be able to find this presentation online on NESHCo. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself. We'll make sure that my email address is on the presentation, or to NESHCo directly at admin@neshco.org, and we'll get your questions answered.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Best
everyone.
Thank you,
of luck to
everybody.
anyone who's going to be submitting.
Yes, best of luck.
Best of luck, and thank you both, Alan and Nancy, for participating today. You brought a lot of great information.
You're very
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
My pleasure.
Wonderful. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.